All right, let's jump right in. I want you to picture something. It's the early 1980s, and word starts trickling out of Japan about this wild new invention, a sushi robot. And of course, the media in the West just went crazy for it.
I mean, seriously, headlines like this were popping up all over the place. They made it sound like a full-on technological invasion was coming for one of the most traditional foods on the planet, something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
So you hear sushi robot, and what do you picture, right? Maybe something with lasers, slicing fish with pinpoint accuracy? Or these complex mechanical arms putting together the perfect roll? What part of this ancient craft was the first to be automated?
Nope, it perfected the rice ball. That's it. This revolutionary, industry-changing sushi robot didn't touch the fish, didn't roll anything. Its one and only job was to make that perfect little bed of vinegared rice. And I know what you're thinking. The rice? That's all it did? But as we're about to see, when it comes to sushi, the rice is the whole game.
Yeah, to really get why a machine that just makes rice balls was such a game changer, we have to understand the journey that rice has taken through sushi's long history. Believe it or not, it wasn't always the star of the show.
So way back when, for hundreds of years, rice was literally just packaging. It was used to ferment and preserve the fish, and then you just scrape it off and throw it away. Then, a few centuries later, people start thinking, hey, maybe we should eat the sour rice too. Fast forward a bit more, they add vinegar to speed things up. But the big moment, the real birth of what we think of as sushi, happens in the 1820s. That's when nigiri sushi appears. And suddenly, the rice is just as critical as the fish on top.
In fact, they don't just call it a rice ball. Oh no, there's this beautiful term for it, share³, and that literally translates to rice jewel. A jewel. That tells you everything you need to know about how important this little amount of rice really is.
And getting that texture right, wow, it's this incredible balancing act. The rice jewel has to be solid enough that you can actually pick it up with your chopsticks, right? But the second it hits your tongue, poof, it should just kind of dissolve, feeling completely light and airy. It is ridiculously hard to pull off.
How hard, you ask? Get this, it takes an apprentice sushi chef 5 years just to master the special floating grip you need to make a perfect share³. 5 years, just on the rice.
And even after all that training, a true master at the absolute top of their game can only crank out about 350 of these little guys an hour, which sounds like a lot until the 1970s hit, and the world suddenly wanted a lot more sushi.
Because that's when conveyor belt sushi restaurants just exploded onto the scene. All of a sudden, sushi wasn't this super expensive special occasion meal anymore. It was fast, it was affordable, it was for everybody. And the demand just went through the roof. There was just no way the existing chefs could keep up. The industry was facing a massive, massive problem.
Enter the man who's going to solve this whole mess. His name was Kisaku Suzuki, and he wasn't a chef, he was an inventor. And for him, this wasn't just some business idea. This was a personal quest, and it was all about his deep, deep love for rice.
I mean, this guy lived and breathed rice. His company's whole motto was literally, "We love rice." He said his dream was to spread rice culture. So making sushi easier for everyone to enjoy, that was right up his alley.
And this passion, it came from a really intense place. He had actually experienced starvation during World War II. So you can imagine his horror when in 1976, he sees a news report that the government is actually paying farmers not to grow rice, just to control prices. To him, that was just a crime, an absolute, unthinkable waste of precious food.
So he does something kind of crazy. He gathers all of his employees at his company, Suzumo, which, by the way, made machines for candy and sweets up to this point, and he basically tells them, all right, everyone, confectionery is over. We're done. From this day forward, we make machines for rice. And our first project, we're going to build a nigiri sushi machine.
Okay, so how on earth do you build a machine that can do something it takes a person 5 years to learn? Well, the engineers at Suzumo did what you might expect. They started by filming a master chef's hands over and over again, and then try to just copy the movements with metal parts.
It took them 2 whole years to build their first prototype. They bring it to the pros, all excited, and the chefs just rip it to shreds. The feedback was brutal. They said, "This isn't sushi. This is a rice dumpling." Ouch. It was dense, it was hard, it had none of the magic. It was back to square one.
So for their next try, they got smarter. Instead of just trying to copy the movements, they focused on the principles. First, you got to fluff the rice to get air in there, so the machine did that. Then it measured out the right amount and used these metal molds to gently press it into shape. It was definitely getting closer, but it was still too firm. It was missing that soft, human touch.
And the final piece of the puzzle, the big aha moment, came from the most unexpected place. After trying everything, one of the chefs mentioned that what they really needed to copy was the soft, springy feeling of a human palm. And the team found the perfect material in the soft silicone tip of a baby bottle. I mean, how clever is that? That was the secret.
And with that little piece of silicone genius, the ST-77 Sushi Robot was finally ready in 1981, and let me tell you, when this thing hit the market, it turned the sushi world completely upside down. So let's just put this into perspective. Remember our master chef? Working their absolute hardest, they could make about 350 rice joules an hour. The Suzumo robot, it could pump out 1,200. That's almost 4 times faster. It was a total game changer.
And the effect on the price was just as huge. All of a sudden, the cost of making a piece of sushi plummeted. We're talking a drop from about $1.50 a piece down to just 50 or 70 cents. For restaurant owners, the math was pretty much a no-brainer. Of course, when you have a hit like that, competitors are gonna show up. And some of them were pretty surprising. You had Tomo Engineering, which was actually started by a restaurant chain trying to solve its own staffing problems. And then, get this, Autech, a company owned by Audio-Technica. Yep, the same people who make your headphones and microphones. Turns out, their founder was just a massive sushi fan and wanted in on the action. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There was still this big cultural hurdle to clear. You know, especially in the fancier, more traditional restaurants. They were worried. People see sushi as this handmade art form. Would they really accept something that came out of a boxy machine on the counter? It was a real concern.
And this is where Suzumo proved their genius again. In 1999, they came up with the brilliant solution, a new, smaller robot, one that was specifically designed to be hidden inside a traditional wooden rice tub. So now, the chef could just reach into the tub, pull out a perfectly formed machine-made rice joule, and the customer sitting at the bar would never know. The robot was right there, hiding in plain sight.
And that just leaves us with this really cool thought to chew on. The next time you're sitting at a sushi bar watching the chef work their magic, you might just be watching a perfect partnership between human artistry and a hidden robotic helper. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many times has your sushi been made with a little help from a robot you never even saw?